The annual Tech Titan Summit in San Francisco was already buzzing with anticipation when Elon Musk strode onto the stage for his keynote address. The auditorium was packed with industry leaders, journalists, and tech enthusiasts who had paid thousands for a chance to witness the biggest names in technology share their visions of the future. Elon looked confident in his trademark black t-shirt and blazer, but there was something different in his expression today. A subtle intensity in his eyes that suggested he had more than just Tesla's latest innovations to discuss. As the applause died down, Elon adjusted the microphone and surveyed the crowd. In the front row, Mark Zuckerberg sat with his team, his face a careful mask of polite interest. The two billionaires had maintained a publicly cordial relationship despite their fundamentally different approaches to technology and humanity's future. But tensions had been building behind the scenes for months, especially after Meta's latest AI model had started competing directly with XAI's systems. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Thank you in advance. Thank you all for coming, Elon began, his South African accent slightly more pronounced when he was passionate about a topic. Today, I'd like to talk about something more important than electric cars or rocket ships. I want to talk about the existential crossroads humanity currently faces. The room grew quiet. This wasn't the usual product announcement they had expected. The decisions we make in the next 5 years about artificial intelligence and neural interfaces will determine whether humanity becomes an interplanetary, enlightened civilization or obsolete biological hardware running on someone else's operating system. Elon paused, his eyes finding Mark in the audience. And not everyone in this room is being honest about their intentions. A murmur rippled through the audience. The moderator, a well-known tech journalist, shifted uncomfortably in her chair at the side of the stage. This wasn't in the program. Mark, Elon said directly, pointing to Zuckerberg, would you care to join me on stage? I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what your company is really doing with its neural interface program. The audience gasped. Mark's expression didn't change immediately, but those closest to him could see his jaw tighten. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded to his team and stood up. The crowd's murmurs grew louder as Mark made his way to the steps and joined Elon on stage. Thanks for being a good sport, Elon said, extending his hand. Mark shook it firmly, his famous smile now present but not quite reaching his eyes. Always happy to have a constructive dialogue, Elon, Mark replied smoothly. Though I'm not sure what specific concerns you're referring to. Elon turned back to the audience. For those who don't know, Meta has been developing a neural interface they call ThoughtStream. They're marketing it as a revolutionary way to communicate through thought, typing with your mind, sharing emotions directly with friends, experiencing virtual worlds more vividly than ever before. Mark nodded. That's right. We've been very transparent about our research. It's an exciting technology with tremendous potential to help people, especially those with physical disabilities. And that's commendable, Elon conceded. But what you haven't been transparent about are the data collection protocols. Your systems don't just translate neural signals into actions. They map, analyze, and store users' thought patterns. He turned to face Mark directly. In other words, you're not just building a tool, you're building the most invasive surveillance system ever conceived. The audience erupted in shocked murmurs. Mark's composure slipped for just a moment before he regained control. That's a serious accusation, Elon, Mark said evenly, and completely untrue. We have strict privacy protocols in place, and all data collection is transparent to users and protected by multiple layers of encryption. Is it? Elon challenged, pacing across the stage now. Then why does the ThoughtStream user agreement, all 246 pages of it, include clauses that allow Meta to retain anonymized neural pattern data indefinitely? Why does it give you the right to use that data to train your AI systems? And why does it explicitly prevent users from opting out of those provisions? The room was completely silent now. Every person was leaning forward, captivated by the confrontation unfolding before them. Mark's expression darkened. You're oversimplifying complex technical necessities and taking things out of context. The system needs baseline data to function properly for each user, and our AI training protocols help improve the experience for everyone. I'm not oversimplifying anything, Elon countered. I'm cutting through the corporate doublespeak. Let me ask you directly, and I hope you'll answer honestly, Does ThoughtStream capture users' emotional responses and thought patterns beyond what's necessary for the functioning of the interface itself? Mark hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, the audience knew Elon had touched on something significant. Our system captures only what users explicitly choose to translate into actions or messages, Mark finally answered. Elon smiled slightly. That's not what I asked, and your non-answer is telling. He turned to address the audience again. Here's what's really happening. Meta's business model has always depended on one thing: gathering as much data about its users as possible to sell targeted advertising. First, it was your likes and shares, then your private messages, then your browsing habits across the entire internet. Now they want your actual thoughts. The tension in the auditorium was palpable as Mark Zuckerberg stepped closer to the microphone. His usual calm demeanor was beginning to crack around the edges, a subtle tightness appearing at the corners of his mouth. That's a fundamental mischaracterization of our business model, Elon, Mark said, his voice controlled but with an undercurrent of irritation. We provide services that billions of people find valuable. The data we collect helps us improve those services and, yes, deliver relevant advertising. But we've never sold user data, and we never will. Elon raised an eyebrow. Semantics. You don't sell the data directly. You sell access to the people based on that data. And now you're positioning to capture the most intimate data possible: people's unfiltered thoughts and emotional responses. The moderator finally intervened, stepping between them. Gentlemen, while this is certainly unexpected, perhaps we can redirect to a more structured discussion about the ethical implications of neural interfaces in general. I'm happy to do that, Elon agreed, but only if we're being honest about what's at stake. The public deserves to know what they're signing up for. Mark nodded. I agree completely with transparency. That's why all our research papers on ThoughtStream are published openly, and why we've worked with regulatory bodies from the beginning. Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out what appeared to be a small device about the size of a coin. Speaking of transparency, I'd like to demonstrate something. This is a prototype of what we've been developing at XAI and Neuralink. We call it the Neural Shield. The audience leaned forward collectively, curious about this unexpected reveal. This device can detect when a neural interface is attempting to access brain patterns beyond its stated purpose, Elon explained. Think of it as a firewall for your mind. We've tested it extensively, including against ThoughtStream prototypes. Mark's expression froze. How exactly would you have tested it against our technology? Our prototypes aren't publicly available. Elon's smile widened slightly. That's the interesting part, Mark. One of your former engineers approached us 6 months ago. They were troubled by what they saw happening in the ThoughtStream program and brought us technical documentation. What we discovered was concerning. The audience gasped. Mark's team members in the front row began typing frantically on their phones. Let me be clear, Elon continued, turning the small device in his fingers. ThoughtStream is designed with backdoor access protocols that allow it to capture emotional responses, memory associations, and even subconscious reactions, all without explicit user consent or awareness. This information is categorized as ambient neural data in your internal documents and is considered separate from the functional data covered by your privacy policies. Mark's face had gone pale. Those would be proprietary documents, if they existed. If someone brought them to you, they violated their employment contract and potentially committed industrial espionage. Perhaps, Elon conceded, or perhaps they were whistleblowing on something the public needs to know about. The ethics of their actions aside, the question is, are my claims accurate? The moderator stepped forward again. Mr. Musk, these are serious allegations that Mr. Zuckerberg and Meta should have a proper opportunity to address. I agree completely, Elon interrupted, and I'm giving Mark that opportunity right now in front of everyone. Simple question. Does ThoughtStream collect what your team calls ambient neural data beyond what users explicitly authorize for the operation of the interface? The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. The audience was completely still, all eyes fixed on Mark Zuckerberg. His team members in the front row had stopped typing and were watching their CEO with expressions ranging from concern to outright alarm. Finally, Mark spoke. All neural interfaces, by necessity, must process more data than is strictly used for the final output. It's like how a smartphone camera captures a full image, but might only use certain pixels for facial recognition. The excess data is discarded after processing. That wasn't my question, Elon pressed. Is the ambient neural data discarded, or is it retained and analyzed? Mark's hesitation was brief but noticeable. Some anonymized aggregate data is retained for system improvement purposes, as outlined in our terms of service. Elon nodded slowly, then turned to address the audience directly. What Mark isn't telling you is that this anonymized aggregate data includes emotional responses to advertisements, unconscious associations with brands, and even the detection of whether you're actively thinking about purchasing products. According to the documents we've reviewed, Meta has already signed preliminary agreements with 5 major consumer goods companies to provide neural engagement metrics once ThoughtStream reaches sufficient market penetration. The audience erupted in shocked conversation. Journalists were frantically taking notes or recording on their phones. Mark's expression had hardened into something between anger and calculation. And now, Elon continued, holding up the small device again, comes the most important part. We're not just exposing this issue, we're solving it. The neural shield can detect and block these unauthorized data collection attempts. And today, I'm announcing that we're making the technical specifications open source, available to anyone who wants to build their own version or incorporate it into other devices. This announcement sent another wave of excitement through the crowd. Mark stepped forward, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. "This is incredibly irresponsible, Elon," he said, his voice tight. "You're creating panic based on misinterpreted documentation and announcing an untested solution that could interfere with the safe operation of medical-grade equipment." Elon turned to face Mark directly, his expression serious but eyes alight with conviction. "What's irresponsible is developing technology that can essentially read people's minds without full disclosure of how that information will be used. But let's put this to the test, shall we?" Elon gestured to someone off stage, and a moment later, a technician wheeled out what appeared to be a simplified version of the ThoughtStream headset mounted on a clear display case. "This is a ThoughtStream developer unit," Elon explained to the audience. "With Mark's permission, I'd like to demonstrate exactly what this system is capable of capturing and what our neural shield can protect against." Mark's expression darkened further. "That appears to be proprietary Meta hardware. I would need to know how you obtained it before I could agree to any demonstration." "The same concerned engineer who provided the documentation," Elon replied simply. "And before you consider legal action against them, remember that whistleblower protections exist for a reason. The public interest in understanding what this technology really does outweighs corporate confidentiality." The moderator stepped forward again, clearly uncomfortable with how the situation was unfolding. "Perhaps we should take a short break and—" "No need," Elon interrupted. "This won't take long. I'm not asking Mark to wear the device, just to acknowledge what it can do." He turned to the technician. "Please activate the visualization mode." The technician tapped on a tablet, and suddenly a large screen behind them lit up, showing a complex interface with what appeared to be various data streams and processing modules. "This is the developer interface for ThoughtStream," Elon explained. "Not the simplified version shown in your marketing materials, but what your engineers actually see. Notice these modules here." He pointed to a section labeled Effective Analysis and another called Association Mapping. The audience was completely silent now, captivated by the technical details being revealed. These modules aren't processing data needed for the basic operation of the thought-to-text or thought-to-action functions. They're analyzing emotional states and mental associations. And most importantly, Elon continued, pointing to another section of the interface, this data isn't just used locally. It's transmitted back to Meta's servers under this innocuous label, System Performance Metrics. Mark stepped forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. "That's enough, Elon. You're presenting technical information without context and drawing misleading conclusions. Of course, we analyze emotional states. Users want to share emotions in their messages. Of course, we map associations. That's how the predictive text functions work." "Then why hide it?" Elon challenged. "Why not clearly tell users, we're going to record how you feel about everything you see while wearing this device, And we're going to map what concepts your mind associates with different words and images. Why bury it in technical jargon in a 246-page document that no one reads? Before Mark could answer, Elon continued. And here's the most disturbing part. He pointed to another section of the interface labeled propensity scoring. According to your internal documentation, this module calculates what you call action likelihood metrics, essentially how likely a user is to make a purchase, share content, or engage with specific types of information based on their neural responses. This data is incredibly valuable to advertisers, isn't it, Mark? The tension in the room was electric. Mark's team members in the front row were now on their phones again, likely calling for reinforcements or preparing damage control. You're taking development features out of context, Mark finally said. Not everything in a developer interface makes it to the final product. We test many capabilities, and yes, we explore potential commercial applications. That's how technology companies operate. Elon nodded slowly. Fair point. So let me ask you directly. Will the consumer version of ThoughtStream collect and analyze emotional responses and mental associations for purposes beyond the explicit functions users activate? Will it transmit that data back to Meta? And will that data be used to enhance advertising targeting? Mark hesitated, clearly calculating the implications of his answer. The audience waited breathlessly. The consumer version of ThoughtStream will collect only the data necessary to provide the services users sign up for. Mark answered carefully. All data collection will comply with relevant privacy regulations and be disclosed in our terms of service. Elon smiled slightly at the non-answer. I think your careful wording speaks volumes, but let me show you what our neural shield can do. He turned to the technician again. Please activate the shield. The technician pressed another button on the tablet, and suddenly large portions of the ThoughtStream interface on the screen turned red, with warnings appearing. Unauthorized data collection detected, and privacy violation, emotional analysis without explicit consent. The neural shield identifies when a neural interface is attempting to access or process data beyond what's necessary for its stated function. Elon explained, it can be configured to simply alert the user or to actively block the collection. And as I mentioned, we're making the specifications open source, so anyone can build one or incorporate it into other devices. Mark's composure finally broke. This is nothing but a publicity stunt, Elon. You're using fear to market a product that solves a problem you've invented. ThoughtStream is still in development, and you're condemning it before we've even finalized its features. This isn't about protecting people. It's about eliminating competition before we can even enter the market you've been struggling to break into with Neuralink. The accusation hung in the air as the two billionaires stared at each other, neither willing to back down. The moderator looked helplessly between them, clearly unsure how to regain control of the situation. Elon's expression remained calm, but his eyes were intense. This isn't about competition, Mark. It's about the future of human autonomy. The line between helpful technology and exploitation has always been blurry, but reading people's thoughts crosses that line definitively unless done with absolute transparency and consent. The standoff between the two tech titans had the audience completely enthralled. No one dared even check their phones, afraid to miss what might happen next. The moderator had given up any pretense of controlling the situation and had retreated to the side of the stage. You speak of transparency and consent, Mark said, his voice steadier now as he regained his composure. Yet you ambushed me on stage with stolen proprietary information and hardware. Is that your idea of ethical behavior, Elon? Elon nodded thoughtfully. Fair criticism. My methods are dramatic, I admit. But after months of trying to address this through proper channels, reaching out to your team, speaking with regulators who were being stonewalled, even attempting to contact your board directly, I felt this was the only way to ensure the issue received the attention it deserves. He turned back to the audience. But there's something else you should all know. Something I discovered only yesterday, which is why I decided to take this public approach. Elon paused, his expression growing more serious. The ThoughtStream technology isn't just designed to capture your thoughts for advertising purposes. According to the technical specifications we reviewed, it has the capability to influence thoughts as well. This revelation sent a shock wave through the audience. Even Mark seemed taken aback. though whether from the accusation itself or the fact that Elon knew about it wasn't clear. That's, Mark began, but Elon cut him off. Let me finish, Mark. The documentation describes a feature called neural suggestion integration. On the surface, it's presented as a helpful way to provide users with recommendations, like autocomplete for your thoughts. But the technical implementation allows for the insertion of what are called preferential pathways, essentially making certain thoughts more likely to occur than others. The audience erupted in concerned murmurs. This was beyond what anyone had anticipated. Mark stepped forward quickly. You're wildly misinterpreting experimental research, he insisted. Neural suggestion integration is about helping users express themselves more efficiently, not manipulating thoughts. It's no different from predictive text on a keyboard. It offers possibilities, it doesn't force them. Elon nodded calmly. I understand the intended purpose, but the implementation creates the capability for far more than that. And when combined with your business model of selling influence over users' attention and decisions, it creates an unprecedented ethical concern. He turned again to address the audience directly. Think about it. A device connected directly to your brain that can not only read but subtly influence your thoughts, created by a company whose entire revenue stream depends on modifying your behavior to benefit advertisers. Even if the current leadership had no intention of misusing this capability, and I genuinely believe Mark when he says that's not the purpose, the potential for abuse is too significant to ignore. Mark stepped forward, clearly frustrated. This is pure speculation and fear-mongering. You're taking research concepts and spinning worst-case scenarios as if they're our business plan. ThoughtStream is designed to empower people, not control them. Then prove it, Elon challenged, his voice quiet but firm. Commit right now in front of everyone to 3 things. First, make all ThoughtStream data collection fully opt-in, with clear explanations of exactly what's being collected and how it will be used. Second, never use neural data for advertising targeting. And third, remove the neural suggestion integration capability entirely until independent ethical oversight can evaluate its implications. The audience held its collective breath. Mark stood motionless for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. His team in the front row looked tense, some shaking their heads slightly as if warning him against making any impromptu commitments. Finally, Mark spoke. I can't make unilateral decisions about the future of a major company initiative on stage without consulting our teams and considering all implications. That would be irresponsible leadership. Elon nodded slowly. I understand, but your hesitation tells us what we need to know. He turned back to the audience. This is bigger than a competition between companies or a personal rivalry between billionaires. This is about the fundamental right to mental privacy, something humans have always taken for granted until now. He paused, looking out at the hundreds of faces watching intently. We stand at a crossroads. Neural interface technology has incredible potential to help people communicate, to heal neurological conditions, to enhance human capabilities. But if we allow it to develop as an extension of the surveillance capitalism model that dominates the internet today, we risk losing something precious and irreplaceable, the sovereignty of our own minds. The audience erupted in applause. Even some of Mark's own team members appeared moved by Elon's words. Mark himself stood still, his expression unreadable. As the applause died down, something unexpected happened. Mark stepped forward and raised his hand for silence. You're right about one thing, Elon, he said, his voice surprisingly calm. This is too important to be decided by business interests alone. He paused, seeming to make a decision. So here's the truth. The shocking truth you promised everyone. The room fell completely silent. ThoughtStream does indeed have the capabilities you described. And yes, we were exploring commercial applications that would have used neural data to enhance advertising effectiveness. I won't deny that. It's a natural extension of our business model. Murmurs rippled through the audience at this frank admission. But, Mark continued, what you don't know is that 3 weeks ago, I made the decision to completely restructure the ThoughtStream initiative. We're spinning it off as a public benefit corporation with an independent ethical oversight board. All data collected will be stored locally on users' devices by default, with sharing being explicitly opt-in only. and we're removing all adaptive suggestion features until they can be thoroughly evaluated by independent experts. Now it was Elon's turn to look surprised. When did you decide this? After using the prototype myself for a month, Mark answered simply. I experienced firsthand the profound intimacy of this technology and realized that our traditional approach to data wasn't appropriate. Some technologies require new models, new thinking. He turned to address the audience. I wasn't ready to announce this yet. We're still working through the legal and organizational details. But Elon forced my hand, and perhaps that's for the best. This conversation needed to happen publicly. The audience was stunned. The narrative had suddenly shifted in an unexpected direction. Elon studied Mark's face carefully, as if trying to determine if this was a sincere revelation or a brilliant tactical move. Finally, he extended his hand. If that's truly your plan, then I commend you for it, he said, and I apologize for the dramatic approach today. The neural shield will still be made open source. The more protection for mental privacy, the better. But I'm glad to hear ThoughtStream won't be what I feared. As the two men shook hands, the audience erupted in applause again, witnessing what seemed like a rare moment of genuine understanding between two of the world's most powerful technology leaders. The moderator finally stepped forward, clearly relieved. Well, I think we can all agree this has been one of the most unexpected and significant discussions in the history of the Tech Titans Summit. Perhaps we should open the floor for questions? But before she could continue, Elon raised his hand. Actually, there's one more thing everyone should know. He looked directly at Mark. The neural shield device I showed today, it doesn't actually exist yet. It was a prop, a catalyst to force this conversation into the open. Mark's eyes widened slightly, then he laughed, a genuine laugh that few had ever seen from him in public. And the ThoughtStream developer unit? That's not real either. It's a non-functional mock-up based on our publicly available design patents. The audience gasped, then broke into laughter and more applause as they realized they had witnessed something rare in the tech world, a moment of genuine truth-telling, even if it had taken some theatrics to get there. As the two men walked off stage together, continuing their conversation in more measured tones, the audience remained buzzing with excitement. Whatever happened next, it was clear that the future of neural interface technology and humanity's relationship with it had been irrevocably altered by the events of this day. The shocking truth wasn't about secret technology or corporate malfeasance. It was that even the most powerful tech leaders were wrestling with the profound implications of the technologies they were creating. And that public discourse, however messy, was essential to navigating the uncertain future ahead.